when you're introduced and they add the adjective brief remarks, that's kind of a guideline for a preacher, but I just want to acknowledge that I heard him that he asked for brief remarks, and I'm going to do the best that I can. We're here today on a very serious subject, and a subject that's dear to our hearts. And I want to say from the onset that I'm not objective. I'm not nonpartisan. I have a point of view, and it's rooted in the history and the progress that we've been making in the construction and development community over the last 3 decades. They've been hard fought. And you know that when you have a public policy discussion and it's really hitting a nerve, then people stop talking about the public policy and start talking about some other thing. They attack people personally. They start rumors about things that are ancillary issues if you hear them at first, but if you dig deep down, they're really just mudslinging. So I want to set the record straight about at least my qualifications to speak on the subject. I was chosen as the New York City's MWBE Advocate of the Year, and I was nominated by the Building and Construction Trades Council. I'm a first vice president in the 100 Black Men, and we founded 7 schools. We are founding 7 schools in the toughest crime districts in the city of New York. No one asked us to do it. We did it at our own initiative. I was, when Amadou Diallo, the African immigrant, was shot, and there were demonstrations outside in one police plaza before the cameras came, and people were getting arrested because of a sense of injustice. I was one of the first to get arrested, and the Amsterdam News put me in its Hall of Fame. Why do you say all of that, Reverend? It sounds like you came up here to pat yourself on the back. No, I put those credentials on the table, in addition to being a past president of the National Action Network New York chapter and marching against apartheid in New York and other injustices. I put those credentials on the table because some people would suggest that we are being used, that MWBEs really don't know much about this, and that we're being manipulated and used by some in the construction industry, as if we don't know what's good enough to stand up for ourselves. So I would say when someone comes to you with a rumor, with the innuendo that they won't stand up and say in public that they're being used, ask them what are their credentials. Ask them where were they when we stood up against injustice. Ask them where were they when we stood up for local law 1 to provide opportunities. Ask them where were they when we went to job sites to get our workers on job sites. Ask them where they were 20 years ago when we founded the mentoring program at SCA that created over $1 billion of revenue for MWBE firms and became a landmark program across the country. Ask them where they were when they tried to whisper behind your back. There's another thing that I want to address straight on, and that is this, that somehow that we've been casting aspersions on union workers. That somehow the people who are favor for reform in Local Law 240 are anti-union or have been bad-mouthing unions. I want to say clearly and without equivocation at this point, nothing could be further from the truth. We admire union jobs. We want our folk to have union jobs, and many of our folk used to be union workers before they became MWB. So we want to make that very clear, because safety is something that we're all concerned about. No one who is on our side of the issue is unconcerned about safety. No one wants to diminish safety concerns through legislation. The panel will debate the merits, the public policy issues, but right now the economy is being threatened by a lack of action in Albany. And that's not without dispute. And if you want to check out the facts, call Connecticut, call New Jersey, and see what their insurance rates are compared to in New York, when New Yorkers have to pay triple the premium that people are paying in other places. And it's hurting our businesses. It's hurting our jobs and opportunities, and it's hurting all of New York. So we decided to get into this fight in a major way, and we're not getting into it just in an eleemosynary sense. We've got skin in the game. At the SCA, we invested in that program. We paid political capital to create those programs. There's no black way to hammer a nail. There is no Italian way to saw some wood. There's no Irish way to work a screwdriver. We're all in this together about building. We see this construction going on in development. We admire it and we want to be a part of it and we want it to grow and continue. But this is a bigger fight than that. Because when we got into the fight, we had to acknowledge that some of us on the same side of the issue, we've had some problems with each other in the past. Yeah, we stood across the barricades and said some things. We went in courtrooms and legislative rooms and were on the opposite side. But on this issue, we came together and we took the occasion, Paul, to say that if we could come together on this issue, we could come together on other issues and work together. So this is a door-opening gateway moment. It's a precedent-setting moment for us to come together. Now, one of the other credentials that I have is that my mentor was a man named Wyatt T. Walker. His name not known to many New Yorkers, but he was Martin Luther King's chief of staff. This is a freedom fight for us. You see, we're not going to be turned around and take no for an answer on this issue. We're all in. And we're saying to those who would profit that you need to take another look and understand who you're standing up against. The story goes that in Birmingham, once during the period of segregation when the people had marched on downtown Birmingham after many atrocities had happened, and you're familiar with that history. Well, at one point, the jails were filled, and it looked like the demonstrations were about to end. Parents were tired, and they were weary, and so they said to Martin Luther King and others, we want to end the demonstrations. The school children said, no, we're going to march. And the parents said, no, you can't march. It's very important for you to go to school. They said, no, the reason we're going to school is to get for something called freedom. That's why we are going to school, and so we're going to march. And so the parents said, you can't go. And so children got up early in the morning and snuck out the window, 6th and 7th and 8th graders. And they marched against snarling dogs. Now, that's kind of an expression, right? But if you think about it, if you've ever gone to a house and got to the fence and you hear a dog barking, what is your reaction? But they knew that there were snarling dogs that were going to be unleashed on them. And they marched against snarling dogs. That spirit is with us here today. The people who would march against snarling dogs are not afraid of trial lawyers. The people who would march against fire hoses that be aimed at school children are not afraid of trial lawyers. The people who marched and fought for freedom and for inclusion and for self-determination were not afraid of Bull Connor, and we're not afraid of the forces against us right now. I want us to be very clear. We can have a discussion on the issues, we can argue the merits, but we're not turning around. We're not going back. When the children came and marched at one seminal point in the demonstrations, the firemen were ordered to turn on their fire hoses. And the fire hoses had something I learned, Ross, that they measure the force of a fire hose by PSI, pounds per square inch. The maximum pounds per square inch are 150 pounds. If someone turns a fire hose on you, it can crack your rib. And the school children stood and they started to sing. They sang a song, and the firemen, grown men, trained men, many who were against the thing that they thought that the children stood for. The fire chief ordered them to turn on their hoses, and they didn't do it. They dropped their hoses and refused to obey the order. And so someone asked, well, what was the song that they were singing? And the name of the song, well, the name is irrelevant, but the words go like this, Senator Orenstein. It says, we are soldiers in the army. We've got to fight. Although we've got to die, we've got to hold up the blood-stained banner. We've got to hold it up until we die. Patrick, we've got blood in the game here. This is a blood fight for us. It's not a political battle. It's not a policy discussion. It's a blood fight for us. These jobs are important to us. Our businesses are important to us, and we have joined this fight for only one reason. We want justice in Albany. We want justice in the law books. We want New York to come into the 21st century and join all the other states with fairness and equity in the treatment of this issue. No matter what side of the equation you came into this place today, as you listen to all the panelists and come to your own conclusion, I would ask, sir, I would ask, madam, that you ask this question, that in American jurisprudence, there is really one overarching issue, that there are two sides to every story. All we're asking is that two sides will be presented in a court of law so that justice can prevail. Thank you and God bless you.